Hey everybody, Mr. The Fanboy here, back for another video. And this time, this is my TNA 2015 year in review. Now, unlike my WWE video, I'm stopping at December with TNA because there's been so much awesome stuff this year that it's hard to remember all of it. Unlike with WWE, I stopped with WWE because it was so terrible. I called it quits early. With TNA, I'm going to do a year in review from everything from January up until November because now today is the 1st of December. And when December is over, I'll do a TNA 2015 December month end review of of um of Impact Wrestling. But this is my 2015 year in review of TNA, and like I said, despite all the problems, as always with TNA, despite all the problems backstage money problems, apparently I don't pay much attention to this, but apparently house show low house show attendance, and all the problems they've been having recently with Destination America on screen with a smaller roster. TNA has been putting on TNA has been putting on awesome show after awesome show, awesome match after awesome match, and of course, one of the first matches that immediately one of the first matches and feuds that immediately comes to mind was, which of course started in late 2014, and that was the EC3 Rockstar Spud feud. Once again, I keep talking about this. I've been a huge fan of Rockstar Spud for a long time. He wrestles on the British independent wrestling circuit. And of course I first saw Ethan Carter III as Derek Bateman on NXT. He was the only thing I actually even liked about that show. I've always hated NXT. He was one of the things I liked about NXT, and now I knew both of these guys would be big if they ever came to TNA, but I didn't expect this much. Never would I thought that a couple of years later, when I saw both of these guys, I would be talking about a match of the year candidate, a feud, and a match of the year candidate. Man, this right here was probably one of the best feuds TNA's ever done because you saw a storyline for months, pretty much starting all the way back till 2013 when both of these guys debuted in TNA. Rockstar Spud debuted in a couple of X Division matches. I remember him wrestling one of the Dude Busters. Then of course he was sent to OVW. Then he made his return when after EC3 debuted in TNA, debuted in debuted in TNA TNA, and as his I think his chief of staff. I think that's what chief of office, something like that. I think that's what Rockstar Spud's role was, chief of office. And you had Rockstar Spud pretty much in every match and interfering and doing all this stuff for Dixie Carter and and Ethan Carter the third. When Dixie Carter gets pushed through a table by the Dudley Boys, EC3 starts blaming people. And he eventually blames Rockstar Spud, slapping him, humiliating him, berating him, and Rockstar Spud turns on him, and attacks, and becomes a face in the process. And EC3 later fires him, but he's later reinstated as a wrestler by Kurt Angle. By Kurt Angle. Then of course um I remember he shaved JB's He shaved Jeremy Borash's head. He shaved Jeremy Borash's head, and of course, this led to a this led to Rockstar Spud cutting an awesome promo where EC3 was bragging about how undefeated he is. When Rockstar Spud, you think I don't know who you are? You think I don't know who you are? Yes, I understand you're undefeated. I was there. Well, cutting an awesome promo, then challenging him to an awesome hair versus hair, awesome hair versus hair match, awesome hair versus hair match, awesome hair versus hair match in England, and this match was awesome. The crowd was totally into the match, and the set design and the arena and the atmosphere were just great, which made the match even better. And then just the violence and just the story these two men told in the ring. Then when it was over, you have EC3 not teasing a face turn, but pretending to show respect, appearing to show respect to Rockstar Spud, and EC3, 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 after raising his hand, attacks him, and shaves his head anyway. Talk about an awesome heel. Talk about an awesome heel, and this right here is where their feud culminated. This right here is where their feud culminated. But their paths will later cross again twice this year. Then of course, like I said, Spud and pretty much Lashley and pretty much Galloway, and I would have to say pretty much the Wolves, I would have to say would be wrestler. I would like to call these guys candidates for wrestlers of the year in TNA. Most of the awesome matches and exciting moments were because of them. Not that the other guys didn't have their moments and stuff, but these guys, the exciting matches and moments. Oh yeah, Kurt Angle too. The exciting matches and moments were because of these guys. Then of course you had then of course Rockstar Spud. Then he later cashes in. Cashes in the money. He later cashes in the He later cashes in. I keep forgetting the order of events this happened. I remember him cashing in. Yeah, I remember him cashing in the he cashed in his X Division title shot on Low Key. Then I think I remember Kenny King beat him. Kenny King beat him to regain the title and bring it back to the BDC. And then Rockstar Spud. I remember him. I think he later regained it in the Battle Royal. And this title shot, I think JB had him. Yeah, he had him cash in option C for a heavyweight championship match against Kurt Angle. Not only did you have EC3 at the beginning of the show coming out being a great heel, EC3 with this moment, he took me back to WCW 2000, WCW 2000, and WWE 2000, WWE or WWF 2000. With in WCW 2000, you had the two top heels in WCW at that point were Jeff Jarrett and Scott Steiner. Kevin Nash was a top heel too, but he kind of went back and forth from heel and face that whole year. But Jeff Jarrett and Scott Steiner, you talk about two heels, and Kevin Nash back then too. Now I'm sick of Nash, but from '96 to 2001, he was awesome. These three heels, you talk about three heels who pissed me off. I was a huge fan of these guys as wrestlers, what they do in the ring, but their characters, what they do in their gimmicks, but their characters and the cheating and stuff they did in the ring. I tuned in every week to see the hero get their comeuppance and triumph over them, man. EC3, I want to see professional freaking wrestling. You got this guy, first off, in the beginning of the show, hijacking the show. Then you got him later wrestling, beating on a couple of small guys. One of them being Nerve Furnham, or AKA Peter Avalon from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. When I want to see professional freaking wrestling, when I heard he was defending his belt, I was hoping to be against a real contender. He's beating on what's his name, but you got no, him defending his belt, that was later. Him in the beginning hijack, but that was another great EC3 moment. But going back to Rockstar Spud, so he cashes it in, and right here we get an awesome match between Rockstar Spud and Kurt Angle. Rockstar Spud and Kurt Angle. And even the week before that, we had an awesome tag team match with Rockstar Spud and Kurt Angle taking on EC3 and Tyrants. People, there was a time in wrestling where a guy like Rockstar Spud wouldn't even be allowed on TV. He'd be part of the ring crew. He'd be part of the ring crew or have an office job somewhere. He would not be allowed on TV. In the 2010s, not in the 2000s, not only is he on TV, he's in a main event. He was in a main event on a 133 pound wrestler. Got to wrestle in the main event twice in a tag team match with Kurt Angle versus EC3 and Tyrus. Then the next week in a World Heavyweight title match with Kurt Angle. And this was awesome. The crowd was into it. Awesome chain wrestling and awesome psychology and moves resembled a real professional wrestling match. So then of course the emotion when Rockstar Spud loses, which means when he tapped the Kurt Angle, 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 not the realization that not only did he lose the X Division championship, not only did he lose the X Division, not only did he lose the X Division championship, not only did he lose the X Division championship, but he lost the World Heavyweight Championship too. Since he lost the World Heavyweight title match, his X Division title is gone, and he actually felt sorry for Rockstar Spud right here. But Kurt Angle, even though Kurt Angle went over, Kurt Angle put him over strong. Awesome match. Then later on that match, this was an awesome pay-per-view right here. We had the comedy moments with Grado, with him trying to lose weight. Then I remember him competing in a triple threat match. I remember him competing in a triple threat match and winning, and Caval competing in a triple threat match and winning and Tigre Uno wrestling in a winning a triple threat match. I think it was Tigre Uno or Manik winning in a triple threat match to advance to a three-way X Division match the following week for the vacant X Division title. But like I said, so not only did this have the awesome Kurt Angle Rockstar Spud match, in the main event you had Austin Aries and Kurt Angle for the World Heavyweight Championship. Austin Aries cashing in his Feast or Fire briefcase for the World Heavyweight Championship. So like I said, man, awesome pay-per-view. And it was after this pay-per-view where TNA, it was after this pay-per-view where they started to go downhill. This is where they were doing the worst feud in my opinion of this year. It led to some awesome matches, which I'm going to get to later. But that was the Magnus James Storm feud. I didn't like this feud. The only thing I liked about it, besides the awesome matches, was it was a vehicle for Magnus, who you should be pushing as your top star. I was really sad when I heard Magnus was leaving in comparison to all the other guys who left, because Magnus was young, unlike the other guys who are all in their mid to late 30s now. But this match right here was but like I said, this is where TNA started going downhill. There was more talking on the show, which I really don't like it when TNA does that. There should be a good balance of both. There should be a good balance of both. And more wrestling, because that's what this sport is called, professional wrestling. You don't tune into a show to see a bunch of talking. You don't I know this thing you have to build up, but do not have a show with a bunch of talking that makes wrestling look bad. I think that's one reason it doesn't draw anymore. It makes it look fake and it's bad acting. It's bad acting and it's bad except is bad acting. Yeah, this is what you call it. But there was one awesome show, Slammiversary 2015. Slammiversary 2015. Another favorite pay per view this year. This pay per view I didn't care for. I didn't care for. That was until they announced the main event. Until they announced the King of the Mountain match will be returning. That match alone was worth the price of admission. That match alone was worth the price of admission. The return of King of the Mountain. The return of King of the Mountain. And since I usually choose, since I'm a huge TNA fan, I should probably put my money where, like Dave said from Off the Rope Show said, to the Ring of Honor fans, when it's pay per view time, it's time to walk the walk and put your money where your mouth is and pay for one of the pay per views. I played for Slammiversary, and from beginning to end, I was totally blown away. A show I didn't think was gonna be good, was gonna be really that good, was awesome. Like, it's not much different from my Slammiversary review, and I've watched the show over like several times now. It's an awesome pay per view. I may even review it again because, like I said, it's kind of hard to review pay per views. It's kind of hard to review pay per views after seeing them because I have the ADHD, which causes me to blank out and miss certain spots in the match, and it's just so much excitement, and so much awesome action that it's hard to call it all. So you have to continuously rewatch stuff to review. You have to continuously rewatch stuff to review. I mean, I may do that again because the pay per view was that awesome. I've watched the matches I've liked in the pay per view over several times now. The pay per view was awesome. Every match told the right story. Every match told the right story. Every match told the right story. Every match was unique and different. My only problem was the venue. And I guess certain wrestlers not being on the card. But the venue. They chose the Impact Zone instead of Dallas, like last year and the years prior, instead of Dallas, Dallas, Texas, Texas. Only other problems I have is the poster. You had Kurt Angle on the on one of the posters. You had Kurt Angle. They should have had Jeff Jarrett. I think he was on another poster, but they should have had Jeff Jarrett on the poster because the whole pay-per-view was pretty much clearly about him. Kurt Angle was supposed to be on it but he had a tumor, so he wasn't on the pay-per-view. But like I said, those only problems I have are the poster, and the venue. The action in the ring was awesome. Like I said, every match was told the right story. You got the opening X Division match between DJZ, Tigre Uno, and Manic. Awesome opener to start the show. Then of course Magnus and Bram, which was awesome. You got Magnus and Bram, which was awesome. I actually wanted not Magnus and Bram, but Matt Morgan and Bram. I actually wanted Bram to wrestle Vader at this show and have Morgan wrestle on or have a three-way match. I know there'll be no bill, but it would just be to see these three monsters in the ring. See these three monsters in the ring would be awesome. Awesome big man street fight. Tough, intense street fight. The total opposite of the first match, which resembled a competitive X Division cruiserweight match. Then of course you got one of my favorite matches from this. One of the matches. This is the match I watch the most. Robbie E, and Jesse. This match unlike the first match, and just like the second match, it was an awesome fight. You have Robbie E coming out in his jacket and just bombarding Jesse with punches, bombarding Jesse with punches. Like I said, awesome match, awesome action from both men. I think Robbie E won with a roll up, but it was just an awesome match, and it told a story between two former best friends who were now fierce rivals. This wasn't a competitive match, just like the Matt Morgan Bram match. This was a fight, man, and it was awesome, man. I was really happy to see Robbie E and Jesse, who were mostly comedy jobbers in TNA, finally being taken seriously. Finally being taken seriously. Finally being taken seriously. And then you got the what else match? What else match on this? Oh yes, Austin Aries and I think it was Davey Richards. I think it was Davey Richards to decide who decides the stipulation for the final match in the best of 5 series. You had an awesome match. You had an awesome match between these awesome technical match between these two guys, competitive technical match, told the right story with, of course, Austin Aries being the dirty heels, Austin Aries and Rob Root cheating for the victory, being a dirty heel. So once again, told the right story. Then you got then of course you got then of course you got what so then of course what match was after that? Oh yes, you had the Magnus. You had the Magnus. I keep forgetting what the Knockouts match was, and really don't care. You had the Magnus and James Storm. You had the Magnus and James Storm street fight. Awesome match. Awesome match with the exception of the finish. After all that action, I remember ending it with a beer bottle. After all of that exciting action, it ended with a beer bottle. But that was an awesome match, man. That was an awesome match. Didn't like the finish though. Weak finish. Then of course, oh yes, awesome, pretty good tag team match with Anderson and Bobby Lashley taking taking on Tyrus and EC3. One of my favorite parts was when Lashley speared EC3 through, I think he speared him through a table or something like that. Yeah, he speared Tyrus through a table like that. And of course Tyrus takes the fall, protecting EC3's undefeated streak. Then of course you got main event time, people. Main event. You had the return of the King of the Mountain. I've watched this match over and over again. It was better the second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth times I've watched this match. This match right here was awesome. First off, you had the beginning of the match. You had the beginning of the match with every wrestler coming out with their badass entrance music, which made it epic. Imagine if it was a bigger arena. It would be even more epic if it was a bigger arena. Then of course you have the fan. Then of course you have JB giving it a cool professional fight feel with announcing the fighters as they're about to fight for the championship, as they're about to wrestle for the championship, announcing each wrestler. Then of course you have the ladder match. Then of course you have the fans. The fans were really into it, and they were heavily behind Jeff Jarrett. The fans, which made it even more epic. Like I said, just imagine if this was a bigger arena. And this match from beginning to end was awesome. So much action is hard to call. It was hard to call at the time when I was watching it. Hard to call. And I love the story where throughout the whole match, okay, everyone was opportunistic, but everyone pretty much went after Jeff Jarrett, and for a while, he had been the only one never to qualify to hang up the title. I love that, man. It was awesome. A lot of people, of course, from what I've seen, I didn't watch many other reviews, but a lot of people apparently didn't like this pay-per-view. Really don't care Because right here, you talk about a show I had really low expectations for. Main event turned out to be good. And after seeing an awesome show like this, I hate to bring up WWE here because this is a 2015 year review, but I stopped watching it and decided to demand better from WWE after seeing an awesome show like this. And after this is where TNA sort of went downhill. You had I mentioned the talking, but you also had MVP. You also had MVP and you also had the MVP Hernandez Lucha Underground controversy. Lucha Underground controversy. Man, it just looked like TNA was falling apart all the way up until I don't remember every match in detail from the show. I remember the show being awesome, all the way up until the Impact where Austin Aries wrestle where Rockstar Spud wrestle Austin Aries, man. Wrestle Austin Aries. Every Impact leading up to that episode of Impact had been okay to mediocre. Okay, mediocre. It was still better than what was on WWE, but it was mediocre and just man. But every show, but it got better once again when Austin Aries wrestled Rockstar Spud to lose in Aries won, he would get Rockstar Spud's name. If Rockstar Spud won, Aries would leave TNA. Awesome technical match here. Austin Aries put Rockstar Spud over strong. And then I love one thing I didn't like. I was kind of mad. When Austin Aries, of course, I was sad when it was announced that he would be departing from TNA, and I was kind of mad when I read the spoilers and saw how he was gonna lose. That he loses a loser leaves match to Spud, which I hate those. I hate you're fired matches or loser leaves matches. But one thing I love at the end of the match, he turns face and congratulates Spud, and they give him an emotional send off, just like they did with Petey Williams. They did with Petey Williams and Jimmy Rave and Lance Hoyt years ago when they lost the Off the Wagon challenge to Beer Money and had to be banished from TNA. They gave him an emotional send off. They didn't do like I didn't like TNA when they did this. I didn't like when they did this. I didn't like when they put Bischoff in a porta potty and what's his name. I didn't like that. I didn't like that. I didn't like that. They gave him emotional they gave him an emotional send off and they gave him an emotional send off. I really loved that right there. Really loved that right there. So then of course that storyline continued a couple of weeks later. Of course, that episode of Impact hasn't aired yet where Robert Roode squashes Spud. But every Impact after that, for the most part now, has been like good. Has been good. Like I said, that's why I'm doing the year in review now, because there was so much awesome stuff. It's hard to remember. Then of course the other wrestler of the year, Bobby Lashley. First off, you have the BDC turning on him and Bobby Lashley becoming a face. You talk about years ago. What they've done with Lashley. I wanted to do that years ago with Monty Brown when you still had a bigger audience and people still cared about wrestling. I wanted to do that with Monty Brown I wanted to do years ago with Monty Brown what they're doing with Bobby Lashley now. Bobby Lashley, like I said, Bobby Lashley turned face, and like I said in my salute of TNA from 2014 and 15, when Bobby Lashley became champion, nothing but awesome matches, man, with the likes of Aries, Hardy, MVP, Robert Roode, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle. Like I said, nothing but awesome matches. Then of course the match where he dropped the title. Of course he had the match where he dropped the title to from Kurt Angle. That right there was a good match. When he dropped the title, that right there was an awesome match. I love how since you had two real legit amateur wrestling champions. Um, this match was like realistic, had a cool MMA shoot fight feel to this fight because you had two real amateur amateur wrestling champions, and I hated to see Bobby Lashley lose, but I understood what Destination America tried to do since Kurt Angle won a gold medal at the Olympics in '96. They tried to market Kurt Angle as their top face, and of course, Kurt Angle, of course, will later end up being a transitional champion for EC3. EC3 and Kurt Angle. This is another awesome feud. Don't have really much to say about it, but this is another awesome feud. Another awesome feud where where EC3's character, he became a new type of character. His character is something unique to TNA that's like never really seen before. He's a heel. He's a guy who gets everything he wants, and is portrayed as never really having to ever really work for anything he's ever got in wrestling, and he constantly cheats. And unlike previous champions, even previous champions like people like Jarrett who cheat, they at least had some type of honor, some way of beating you clean. Whereas EC3 always an illegal advantage, always cheating, and does anything it takes to win while being a great credible wrestler, which makes him serious. He cheats and does all this other stuff, but unlike Seth Rollins on the other channel, I hate to go back to WWE again, but I gotta go back to that. Unlike Seth Rollins on the other channel, he was still portrayed as strong and can fight and stuff, so that made him dangerous and stuff like that. So yeah, Bobby Lashley, several awesome matches. He had a pretty awesome old school gimmicky sports entertainment match with Jesse. I want him to start off like Kurt Angle and them did, then get to all the other stuff. But no, they had a traditional match where Jesse played the heel, old school good guy and bad guy, where Jesse played the heel. To awesome psychology here. Then the next week, I remember him wrestling Mordecai, and then of course him along with the Wolves and Drew Galloway and Bram represented TNA in the GWF Lethal Lockdown match. Then of course you had what else? Then of course after that, of course, he competed in the match to decide who wrestles in a triple threat at I think it was the Gauntlet match. I think it was a battle royal to decide who wrestles EC3 at who joins EC3 and Hardy at BFG 2015. But going back to Spud, when EC3, of course, I like how they went their separate ways, but their paths crossed again, and Spud ended up wrestling EC3 for the heavyweight championship. And I like how Rockstar Spud and EC3 have so much chemistry. Not only do they put on a good match, but they give you a different match every time. The last one we saw a fight. This one was more of a traditional competitive wrestling match, like these two guys putting their personal differences, putting their history behind, and this time it was all about the title, man. It was all about the title. They portrayed that in the ring. So what's his name? What's his name? And what's his name? So like I said, awesome fuse. Then of course, like I said, Drew Galloway. Drew Galloway, him and MVP had an awesome feud with the Rising, which sadly to say had to come to an end when MVP and Hernandez got released from TNA, and of course Low-Key gave his notice. Low-Key gave his notice. Homicide, according to Wikipedia, was quietly released, and man, then Kenny King didn't really care much for her. It sucks that awesome feud had to come to an end. Then of course it's it then MVP of course later defeat MVP the BDC later defeated Drew Galloway to end the Rising, and of course this is when Eli Drake, another awesome wrestler, Eli Drake turned on Galloway, and this began Galloway's big push as a singles wrestler and as a singles wrestler at TNA. And I remember Drew Galloway. I loved his new character, him the Leonidas of TNA as Pope. As Pope does him this serious, intense Galloway, the character, pretty much how he is on the how he was in the British wrestling independent circuit before he got to WWE. So yeah, awesome feuds with what's his name. Awesome feud with him and GFW. That feud was so awesome. I'm still kind of sad that feud had to end so quickly. I wish Jeff Jarrett's GWF would have won I wish Jeff Jarrett would have won the Lethal Lockdown match and ruled TNA and had the whole ruled TNA for a couple of months, and had Jeff Jarrett rule TNA and control TNA and have this feud go all the way up until BFG 2015, or at least until the end of this year. That's what I would have or up until lockdown of next year. But like I said, but all good things had to come to an end. Jeff Jarrett sold his stake in TNA, sold his majority stake to Dixie Carter, and left TNA to focus exclusively on his GFW promotion. But this angle was awesome. I love the GFW guys. I wish the Super Show, the TNA versus GFW Super Show, which was again, I may review that again. The TNA GFW Super Show was awesome. First off, like I said, I've said it once, I'm gonna keep saying it again. You got let's not only was the roster awesome where you had Sanjay Dutt, PJ Black, formerly Justin Gabriel in WWE, Trevor Lee, and I keep forgetting Kurt Hawkins. Kurt Hawkins' new name in TNA. And Lady Tapa, and Chris Mordecki, Chris Masters. I'm gonna say it once. I'm gonna say it again. You got PJ Black on his first night in TNA. Him and Masters are in a main event. Wrestling for the King of the Mountain Championship in an awesome, phenomenal King of the Mountain match. I love both of the King of the Mountain matches this year, but if you force me to choose, I would say this one because you mixed it with, whereas the last one you mostly had heavyweight wrestlers. This one you mixed it with all types of wrestlers. Big, strong wrestlers, quick and agile wrestlers like Robbie E, and then of course high-flying wrestlers like Justin Gabriel. Not only is him and Masters in the main event, PJ Black on his second night with the company, wins the heavyweight championships and gets a title shot the next week. Another awesome match with EC3. Then of course he drops the title to Rude. Who is right now an awesome awesome King of the Mountain heavyweight champion. So You so like I said, what you call it? On their first night with the company, they did that. They did so much for them. Then you got Kurt Hawkins' character. Kurt Hawkins in his last years with WWE, the early 2007 and 2008 were for the most part good. Were good. When they split them up, when they split them up, Kurt Hawkins was barely on TV. When he was jobbed out. When he's jobbed out here in TNA, tag team title shot against the Wolves, and they beat the Wolves for the tag team. They beat the Wolves for the tag team title shot with the Wolf for the TNA tag team titles, and the Wolves beat them. I think and the Wolves. I think they later beat them weeks later to regain the belts, and I think they defended them again. The rematch clause against at BFG 2015. Okay, the American Wolves. You talk about the American Wolves, the other wrestlers of the year. You talk about two wrestlers in Ring of Honor I hated. I hated their boring spot fest, strong style jiu-jitsu garbage they were doing. No selling garbage they were doing in the ring. You had Davey Richards and Roderick Strong having one of the most boring main events of all time, the most boring feuds of all time back in 2012. So two guys I hated are now probably one of the better things, are one of the best things about TNA. A lot of the awesome matches are because of these guys. These guys are much better at TNA, much better promos, much better matches, much better matches. They've managed to combine their style with the TNA wrestling style, the TNA wrestling style. What's the name? I'm a fan of them, not a super fan of them like I am. Let's say Galloway, Lashley, Rockstar Spud, Hardy Boys, Manic, Uno, and Eli Drake, Jesse, Robbie E, and Eric Young, Melendez, Mika, and Abyss, and Abyss and Mahabali Shira and those guys. But like and Grotto. Like I said, I'm a super fan of all those guys I just named. I'm a fan of the Wolves, but not a super fan. Not a super fan of those guys. But like I said, they're probably the best wrestlers besides Lashley and Angle. They're probably the best wrestlers. I'm talking about from a pure wrestling standpoint in TNA. Right now. And like I said, a lot of the awesome matches are because of them. They had an awesome match with what's his name, and they had an awesome match with Manic, and Abyss, where Manic, you talk about Manic, a guy I saw years ago in TNA when he was young as Puma. He really wasn't that good. Then I saw him years later in Championship Wrestling for Hollywood, which NWA Wrestling Showcase. This was the original NWA Wrestling territory before it became NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, where they had Adam Pearce. They had Adam Pearce as their top heel with Brent Albright, Brian Danielson, and T.J. Perkins and the Young Bucks as their top baby faces. Yeah, this is the show I also first saw the Young Bucks on. This was back in 2008. You can find this show here on YouTube. But like I said, this right here is where T.J. Perkins in the main event. He wrestled Adam Pearce in an awesome match. Then he later appeared on Lucha Libre USA as Citico. Then now he's in TNA as Manic, and I love what TNA did. The suicide gimmick, I love the suicide gimmick, but I wish they had given it to a wrestler with no gimmick or who's just not entertaining instead of giving it to Kazarian and Daniels, who already have gimmicks and don't need that. I love how they gave it to someone who needed it more, like Perkins. They gave it to T.J. Perkins. And then I love how you got the Revolution stable, a stable I initially didn't like. The only thing I liked about it was a stable featuring two originals, James Storm and Abyss. But you had this awesome stable. I didn't like any of their feuds, but I loved the stable, and I love the Revolution stable with Sonata. I love how they rechristened and repackaged each of these wrestlers: Sonata, T.J. Perkins, and of course Koya, or now Mahabali Shira. Then seeing this stable is where James Storm, just like Spud did to EC3, James Storm berates Koya, and Koya turns on him and talks about his heritage, and now renames himself Mahabali Shira. Then you got Koya. I saw this guy 2 years ago when TNA. I saw this guy 3 years ago when TNA was doing the Rain Ka King promotion in India. In India, and I saw him wrestling a match with Steiner, and the match was terrible. And this guy was green. I was like, there's no way. There's no way this guy will ever be anything big in wrestling. 3 years later, he proves me wrong, and it's still is getting there. And in my opinion, one day he can be one of the first Indian champions. Um, but talk about proving me wrong. He's way better now than what I saw in Ringa King 3 years ago. Um, and I mentioned how much the Magnus. I mentioned how much the Magnus and James Storm. This was the worst feud of this year. This whole feud was terrible. Led to some awesome, exciting matches, but this was the worst feud of this year. It was so boring. I'm sorry, it was kind of hard to care. As much as I'm a huge fan of Magnus. After all the stuff we've seen from Magnus in the past, turning on Sting, I love what he did with AJ Styles, and I actually like the story behind what he did with Sting. But I love what he did to AJ Styles when he said he wanted to rid TNA of the dinosaurs and have it all young guys. But it was still but after the stuff he did with Sting and all this heel stuff he did in the past, and a guy who's a natural heel, it was kind of hard to kind of root for him despite all the bad things. And then it was hard to root for Mickie James after how she left TNA. She's another wrestler who was awesome, but her arrogance just gets on my nerves, so that makes me not care about her matches. So I initially didn't care. I love how they incorporated Serena, an underused wrestler from WWE. But like I said, I didn't like this feud. It was boring. It was boring. The only thing I liked about it was a good vehicle for Magnus. It was a good vehicle for Magnus. So as much as I hated when both of these guys left, I was kind of happy when both of these guys left because that meant this boring feud was over with. Like I said, awesome matches, but just a boring feud, and probably the worst feud of this year. Then you had EC3 and Matt Hardy. Awesome feud here. I just wanted Matt Hardy to challenge EC3 for the championship and that be it. But they gave Hardy multiple shots against EC3 in a program where EC3, they made it interesting where if EC3 beat Matt Hardy in this next title shot, if Matt Hardy wins, he's the champion. Wins, if EC3 wins, Jeff Hardy has to become his assistant. Matt Hardy loses after an awesome match. Matt Hardy loses after a roll up, and now Jeff Hardy was now EC3's assistant. You talk about awesome storyline. Talk about getting me invested in the storyline with EC3 bullying Matt Hardy. You felt for these characters. I felt for these characters, even though I know this is all an angle. And with him trying to tell him to beat up and injure Rockstar Spud, like I said, just awesome stuff. And then culminating at Bound for Glory, where Matt Hardy does the impossible. See, people say, "Oh, you're a hypocrite because you complain about old guys in WWE." Difference was in WWE, I want to see WWE. There was something I wanted to see. WWE, I wanted to get what I wanted, and I didn't get it. In TNA, I just wanted to see this story played out. I didn't really care who won the title. So no, EC3 losing at BFG does not anger me. And I actually love Hardy winning because it was Hardy getting his redemption. You talk about a story you built for months. Hardy getting his own redemption. Then Hardy relinquishing the belt afterwards. Well, since TNA now is not taping any shows, these are matches they've previously taped, and they don't return to television until January. Of next year on Pop TV. Um, This right here, Matt Hardy had to relinquish the title, which made me respect Matt Hardy even more. Made me respect Matt Hardy's character even more. Already a huge fan of Matt Hardy, the wrestler. Huge fan of the wrestler, and character. But this made me respect his character even more. And now I'm just watching this tournament, seeing who's gonna win it, who's gonna win it. Tournament, I still don't understand like a lot of the rules, but this tournament was just entertaining. So many awesome matches, and I like how I get what I want. And Mandrews, I complained at BFG 2015, awesome pay per view by the way, but I complained that him and Crazy Steve and Spud were nowhere on to be seen on that pay per view, especially Spud, who you've been pushing as a major player, a major star this year. Neither one of these guys were seen at this pay per view. Neither one of these guys were seen at this pay per view. But Spud beats. But Spud. But Spud. But Spud beats. Yeah. You see. Grado. He makes his return to another wrestler you need to be pushing. Grado. He makes his return. Like I said, so many awesome matches with you have Robbie E and Matt Hardy, who they had an awesome match. Robbie E upsetting the Wolves. I remember him beating both Davey and I think he beat both Davey and Fast Eddie Edwards. You have Jesse and I think it was Jesse and Mika Haku's son, Haku's son. Then of course you have another awesome match. Oh yeah, Beer Money Reformation Storm and Robert Roode, Matt Hardy. He also had matches with the Wolves. Rockstar Spud. He had an awesome underdog match with two awesome underdog matches with Drew Galloway and Bram. And I also remember a technical comedy match with Grado. Man, this right here was awesome. This match right here was awesome. They started off with the traditional wrestling at first, and they got to doing all the signature moves of all the wrestlers, all the legendary wrestlers over the years. EC3 and Austin Aries and Mr. Anderson, a match from the Indies I saw years ago. I saw them wrestle Austin Aries and Ken Anderson in the Indies. Then I love the build up for the match where Aries and Anderson were poking fun at EC3, saying we had to work in the Indies. We had to make our living for a year. EC3, he wouldn't know anything about that. That was awesome. I love the promos. And speaking of promos, love the return of Crimson. He's been at several tapings and one night only shows. I want Crimson to return full time. He's another guy who should have been a big star for your company. I want him to return full time. Full time. I think who did Crimson? I keep forgetting who he wrestled, but he's been having awesome matches. So like I said, TNA in 2015 has been awesome. You had the EC3 Rockstar Spud feud, which this had been building for months since 2013. You had Bobby Lashley and Kurt Angle BDC feud, which also included Austin Aries. You had Eric Young, the deranged psycho lunatic, and Eric Young, his emotional feud with Chad Melendez. I was mad when TNA did an angle like that with TNA did an angle like that, with an offensive angle, edgy offensive angle like that, where Eric Young, if he beat Chris Melendez, he gets his leg. I hate stuff like that. I hate whenever an amputee wrestler or a wrestler with an illness or some type of disability is in wrestling. I hate it when they exploit it on television. It should be not about that. That should not be used in a storyline. I hated that, but that's what people love to see. They love to see controversy. And Eric Young was an awesome heel. I hate Even though I'm a huge fan of his, I hated him, man. I hated him, and I was happy when Chris got his revenge, yeah, and when Kurt Angle made EY tap at BFG 2015. Talk about being totally invested in the storylines. So Eric Young, his deranged psycho lunatic bearded terror gimmick, awesome, and his emotional feud with Melendez. Um, the whole Revolution stable. I didn't like the feud with Max, but the whole Revolution stable, how that crumbled. I loved when Muhammad Shira turned on James Storm. Then the next week where both Abyss, once again Abyss saying for the I don't know how many times he's done this. He's gonna be his own man and not tear up anyone. And he was a monster before he joined James Storm's Revolution. Then of course T.J. Perkins, he leaves because he says he's best friends with Mommy Sheer, that his name is not Manic, his name is T.J. Perkins, and takes off the mask. Then the next week, both in a badass fashion, both T.J. Perkins and Abyss show up next week, and James Storm says, "What are you two doing out here?" And they act like they're about to reform the Revolution, but instead, Abyss gives James Storm a black hole slam, and James Perkins goes up there for a frog splash. Goes up to the top rope for a frog splash, and so like I said, man, and awesome feuds. Then of course you had the BDC and Rising feud, which I was sad and that had to end so early. And the Rising, I was actually sad when they broke up because they were standing up for wrestling. Then of course, which I saw coming, Eli Drake turning heel, and now I love Eli Drake. Like I said, you got wrestlers like Spud, the Wolves. You got wrestlers like Spud, the Wolves, the Hardy Boys, and Robbie E. Wrestlers who are like more relatable. Then you have wrestlers like Bobby Lashley, Jesse Goddard, Eli Drake, Robert Roode, who are all in Abyss, who are all larger than life. The whole TNA roster right now looks like a video game comes to life, and so many awesome gimmicks and characters. The knockout division, like I said, I don't like the knockout division, but that's been entertaining this year. I don't really have much to say about the knockout division, but it's been entertaining. Then of course, so like I said, so many characters. Then another thing I love about TNA, I love the explosion matches where they show matches they've taped and they show them with the cool arena. What's his name? We've seen several awesome matches between Perkins, Manic, and Tigre Uno. I love Tigre Uno, a wrestler who, when he first came, I didn't like. He was way too small, and I didn't like the way his mask looked, and I didn't like his moves. He was botching a lot of moves. Then I saw him. I didn't recognize him because he had different attire, but Tigre Uno was. I became a fan of his when I watched. When he started putting on more awesome matches in Impact Wrestling, but when I went back and watched Triple Mania, the AAA's biggest pay-per-view, Triple Mania 2009, where he wrestled as Extreme Tiger in a triple threat match with Crazy Boy, Super Crazy's cousin, and I think in a four-way match with Crazy Boy, Alan Stone, and Alex Kozlov. He wrestled in a four-way match, and I saw all these badass moves, and that's who Tigre Uno is. Yeah, I didn't recognize him because he had different attire. He had long pants versus tights. Now he had long pants, and he called himself Extreme Tiger. I think the Tigre Uno name comes from the blessing of, I think, Mysterio Senior. I think so. Who I think trained him. So yeah, him putting on several awesome X Division matches. I remember one awesome match just recently between Robbie E and Magnus back when he was still with the company, back when Robbie E was still heel. I loved another match just a more recent match was between Jesse and Mika, which this whole match was like a video game come to life, and you had so many awesome video game references from the Pope at ringside, referencing Fatal Fury and Street Fighter, and you had um Rockstar Spud taking on Sanjay Dutt in. This was, instead of being you would expect an athletic X Division style match from these two. This was an old school wrestling match between two X Division wrestlers with psychology, with Rockstar Spud playing the frustrated heel and Dutt playing the face. Same another awesome match like that was between Spud and Steve. Um, and you got Steve putting on several awesome matches in this series with in this series now. So like I said, awesome, just so much awesome stuff, man. You got Mandrews, awesome matches with Perkins and Tigre Uno, and an awesome explosion match with James Storm. And early this year at Lockdown 2015, which I just got done finished watching. When I just got done finished watching, you had an awesome match between you had an awesome match between a three-way between Tyrus, not a three-way, but a handicap match between Tyrus and Spud and Mandrews. Once again, awesome wrestling psychology. So TNA has had an awesome year of wrestling, characters, storylines, and angles, in-ring psychology, athleticism. And one thing I love about TNA now, and then in more recent years, is now a young roster. You still have some old guys, but for the most part, a young roster. One problem I couldn't stand with TNA from previous years was, especially in 2011 and 2012, it was mostly old guys. Pretty much none of the new guys in 2012 when they were doing the gut checks, none of the new guys were really ready for the roster yet. You were seeing nothing but old. You were seeing nothing but old guys. All the wrestlers who were featured in TNA were stars from the early 2000s who were in their mid 30s now, who are in their the late 30s now. So now you see that, but you see a lot of young guys. You see a lot of young guys too. You're seeing wrestlers and stars from today. So and that's one of the things I love about TNA now. So like I said, TNA, it's just been an awesome year. Like I said, when TNA is when December is over, I'll do a monthly review of all the awesome matches and stuff I see from this month. And I'm also going to do TNA yearly reviews from the previous years. Like 2010, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And on another channel, I'll do 2002 through 2009. So, like I said, this right here was my TNA in 2015 review, man. TNA is so awesome, and I'm also really excited to hear about their deal with Pop TV. And already this is a channel I can get. So and I already checked. This is a channel I have on my television. So when TNA gets this channel, I'll immediately be able to watch TNA. There was a period where I couldn't watch Destination America because I wasn't sure I had it. Then I forgot what the channel was. Then when I had the channel, it somehow messed up my TV. But now I don't have any problems anymore. So yeah, all right, Dugout.